You're listening to a Bored to Death Herocast, talking superhero anime and other hero fare in easily digestible chunks. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and other assorted gender assignations. Welcome back to the Bored to Death Herocast. I am Jay, being joined by
Sam,
and we are back for the next two episodes of My Hero Academia Season 5. We're still in the middle of the Class 1A versus Class 1B combat training
final match.
Probably
getting into the overall story arc after this.
Yep, getting back to the villains arc after this, most likely. Of course, one of the other threads going through these fights has been Shinso from Class 1C wanting to basically prove his mettle so he can move up into the hero track from the general studies track that he'd been on. And he acquitted himself very well when he teamed up with Class 1A, but now he's on Class 1B, and this team is essentially captained by everyone's least favorite jerk-ass Monoma.
We get a little more about how he is.
Yeah,
in this episode.
It's just like the rest of his class, they do generally like him, but all of them are just like, dude, what the hell is it with you in Class 1A? Because it's just he does not like Class 1A, and it's like the supposed rivalry between the two classes.
Well, I get why he's like that, because he's in 1B, everyone just talks about A, and he's like, well, why? We're both hero courses, why is one more revered than the other?
It's because the Class 1A keeps ending up at the center point of a whole bunch of these villain attacks. Not through any fault of their own. It's like not because of anything they specifically are doing, but just because the League of Villains keeps targeting All Might, who happens to be helping mentor their class. So yeah, it's been an interesting few matches we've seen. Class 1A won the first fight. Class 1B won the next one, as I recall. And then the third match ended in a draw because both teams ended up capturing one of the other students, but they weren't able to actually force a condition where one team actually won. It's just 1B realized we can't win, but we can make it so that the other team can't win either. And so it's just like, so we didn't win, but we also didn't lose, sort of thing. And then last episode, we saw Bakugo's team go up against 1B, and it was a flawless victory.
Yeah.
And Bakugo showing that he's actually slightly matured.
More of a team player.
He became a team player, which, given that it's Bakugo we're talking about, nobody really saw that coming. But even then, it's like, while he was a team player, he was very much a follow my lead kind of team player. So yeah, and they won, and Bakugo's team won in less than 5 minutes. It wasn't just a flawless victory, it was very, very fast flawless victory. And it wasn't just Bakugo doing it either. The rest of his team managed to figure out some of the drawbacks of the other team's quirks, specifically Tokage's lizard split ability.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting to see.
And yeah, they basically managed to come up with all that. And Monoma was very, very twitchy after that loss. It's just sort of like he started making plans with his team. The teachers are all basically seemed supportive of the idea of Shinso moving up. Basically saying he still has a lot of ground to make up to catch up to everybody else because he hasn't had all this extra training.
Yeah.
But
combat training.
Yeah, the combat training, everything. But
the hero training underneath the pros and the academies, or for their stations and everything. And
Aizawa actually praised Bakugo's team after the fact, which, given that it's Aizawa we're talking about, it's like... and King Vlad was basically chastising 1B's team. It's like, you had a good plan, but you weren't flexible enough to change things up when it became clear that plan wasn't working. Which is how a teacher should be. He was just like, you screwed up. Here's how you screwed up. Do better next time, kind of thing. Instead of just being like, screaming at them and not offering any actual constructive advice. But yeah, everybody's starting to plan now. They've 1A is aware that they've got a serious drawback in that not all of their powers are necessarily very good against some of the stuff that they're seeing, and they know that Monoma can copy people's abilities, and they know now that Shinso has stepped up his game with his quirk and with that new face mask thing that he wears.
To be able to
mimic other people's voices. Is something that they really have to keep an eye out for. So,
how do you think it's going to go this match?
I really don't know, but I think 1A is still going to somehow manage to pull out a victory, and that's just because of the wild card that is Deku's power. Because we know, obviously, nobody else in the match itself knows this, but nobody is really aware of what Deku's quirk actually is and how it works. We have seen in Heroes Rising that because it is actually multiple quirks sort of stacked on top of each other, when 9 tried to steal his quirk, it failed because there were too many quirks for him to copy, because he already had he had a limit of 9 quirks that he could copy, and he didn't want to give up any of the ones that he already had. But and Monoma, yeah, he can copy quirks, but then it comes down to how much control he sort of has over his quirk. Obviously it's never really been much of an issue for him, because when he's trying to do it, it's usually just to people who have one quirk. But if you were going to try to copy a quirk off of a Nomu, because Nomus have multiple quirks grafted onto them.
Yeah. And
in Deku's case, One for All is explicitly the stockpiling quirk. And it's also basically stockpile these other quirks onto it, like the strength enhancing quirk that All Might is so well known for.
Yeah.
There's probably it probably has copied the floating quirk that All Might's mentor, or predecessor had.
The Jet Feet?
No, not his mentor. I meant his predecessor in One for All. What's her name? I can't remember. Shigaraki's aunt?
Yes.
And so it's just, and presumably other quirks along with that. It's just Deku is still awakening to all of what he has inherited from All Might. And it's just, but, it's I think the strength enhancing quirk just happened to be the most powerful one there, and so it awakened first. And as he gets stronger, he'll unlock more of these powers. But for now, all he has is the strength enhancing quirk, which even then he has to dial back because it is so strong that he will literally break himself if he tries to go full bore, as we've seen. And with Monoma, it's hard to say if he's going to get just the stockpiling thing, in which case he's kind of boned because it will just show up fresh. Or if he gets the strength enhancing one, doesn't know how powerful it is, and breaks himself.
Yeah.
You I think have already watched these in Japanese.
No, I watched them in English as they came out.
Oh, you did? Okay. But yeah, I still have not watched it. But so it's going to be interesting. But it's so hard to tell what the end result is going to be. Whether it's going to be another draw, whether Monoma's going to pull it out. But I think it's going to be a victory for 1A. And that's just me in my brain thinking that. In my heart, I'm I want 1A to win just to piss off Monoma because he's such a freaking jerk about it all.
You'll never let him hear the end of it.
Exactly. And I mean, if we're honest, there's a few people in 1A that might rub it in his face. Mineta being one of them would absolutely rub it in his face because that's how he's wired. And Kaminari would probably do the same thing. Maybe Kirishima also. Bakugo would basically...
He doesn't care either way.
He doesn't care either way. And he would probably point out the victory, less to rub it in their face and more just to be like, shut up, nerd.
They're like, come on, man, join in the group of picking on 1B. It's like, I don't have time for those weaklings.
Yeah, basically. But if, like, Monoma were to, like, keep mouthing off, it's like, you lost to us. Just shut up already. Quit whining and just get better. So, yeah. I'm partly stalling for time here because as we're recording this intro, we're trying to get Funimation to cooperate because the episodes keep running into problems.
It's the entire app. Not a single show would work.
Oh,
I tried multiple episodes of My Hero, episodes in Demon Slayer. Anything.
So yeah, we're running into a few little technical difficulties.
We
So
might have to do the episodes another day. Woohoo!
In which case, hey, this intro will be like a day, possibly an entire day before everything else. But I think that about wraps up this intro. So, unless you have anything else that you want to add.
The only thing I'm going to say is you're going to be surprised.
I'm sure I am. But that, I think, is going to wrap up this intro. So we'll be back at some point after the binge, when we get it working. Hello, and thanks for listening. While we're binging, please give us a like and subscribe. If you want to reach out, do it via our social media on Facebook or Twitter at BTD_Bingecast. The Bored to Death Clan is part of the CKCC Radio family, including J Bunny's Music Hub, the Race Nerd Podcast, Real Paranormal Talk, Ranking Tracks, Motivational Moves, The A Show, Park Hopper 101, and The Nerd Table. Please consider supporting CKCC Radio on Patreon so we can continue to bring you podcast content. And now, the binge is done, so let's get to the discussion. And we're back. So, like I predicted, Class 1A was going to pick up the win because One for All is not entirely what Monoma thinks. But I don't think any of us were... I don't think I was expecting what we got.
Except for me.
Well, yeah, but you've already seen the episode, so that doesn't count. Because you're a jerk like that.
I don't want to wait. I did enough waiting for the last 3 seasons.
This is true. There was a bit at the beginning of the first episode of this 2-episode binge, which ties into the overarching plot, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. Because the Class 1A's team, we obviously know there's Deku and Uraraka, Mineta, and Ashido, Pinky. Class 1B's team has Shinso on it with his brainwashing quirk and Monoma's power copying quirk. As far as we know, it was, at least at the time of the sports festival, he could copy up to 3 that he could use for like 5 minutes, but he could only copy 1 at a time. He might have the others in reserve, but he can't use them all at once. It's like he had to switch between them. And although late in the second episode of this binge, he then claimed that he had upped his time limit to 10 minutes and that he could copy 4 quirks.
He said maybe you don't know.
I said he claimed, but that but at the time he was being ferried off by Uraraka to put him in the prison, and she suspected he was doing it to try to get a response out of her because she suspected he might have Shinso's brainwashing quirk.
That was late second episode, though.
Yeah, I know. As I said, but we don't know if that's true or not because Monoma's whole thing is that he literally talks an immense amount of shit to provoke a reaction out of people, especially when there is a suspicion that there might be the brainwashing thing going on. But that ties into a conversation he had with Shinso in this episode, where it's just sort of like, he embraces. Well, it's like he was always told as a kid that with his quirk, he would never become a hero. And he is still determined to become a hero, but he also embraces the notion that he might have to behave in an unheroic manner in order to actually be a hero. Like, he's willing to have like a low approval rating, but still wants to do good things.
Well, he wants to do the good things. It's just that sometimes you got to be a little nefarious with.
Sometimes you got to tap into that dark side in order to get the job done. And he was trying to sort of claim a sort of kinship of sorts with Shinso, because Shinso was in sort of the same boat. Was sort of told that with your quirk, that's not a hero's quirk.
It's like, yeah, don't.
And Shinso was just like, we are not. Shinso was like, no, I disagree. And 1B did have a pretty good collection of quirks on their side, because they had Poltergeist. With her ability, she is essentially telekinetic, and she can manipulate multiple things at once, but only up to the weight of like a single person.
Well, what a single
combined
person
weight of a single person. Yeah, she could carry that much. And
size.
Then there was Kodai, who has the size quirk. She can shrink and expand things, but only inorganic things. And then there was Shota with the twin impact ability. Basically, he can hit something, and then at a later point, he can basically cause a second impact to hit it with greater force. So it's like he can punt, like he could throw a ball up into the air, slap the ball towards something, and then en route, boom, second hit, and it goes faster.
He'd be good at projectile quirk.
Oh yeah, well we saw him doing that in this episode when he grabbed that like that wheel or something off the or gear or whatever off the ground, flung he flung it towards Pinky, and then twin impact and shot it at her faster, and she would have gotten taken out if Mineta hadn't trampolined his way into it. Of course, he had his own ulterior motive for that, because we got a little bit more detail on Mineta's quirk that.
Well, we knew. I mean, from like the first season that he could bounce off his own stuff. That's why he was doing the. We were supposed to jump back and forth across the lines. He had the balls like this, and he was just going as fast as possible.
Okay, I had forgotten that. But then we hadn't seen him use that aspect of his quirk.
He used it to climb the wall to the bathhouse, and he didn't stick to him.
Yeah, but it's not something that comes up very often. It's mostly the sticky aspect of it that we keep hearing about. And yeah, he basically was sort of in his own internal monologue during that moment, revealed that the pop-off balls that he had been sort of throwing around seemingly randomly had not been random at all.
He's like, they are random, but he didn't do it as a trap necessarily.
It wasn't just a trap thing. It was literally so for traversal for him, because he can just trampoline between them, picking up speed. And he used that to intercept the thrown gear by Shota, and the impact, of course, then knocked him into Pinky, so he got to bump his face right into her chest.
And she knew what was going on, so she grabbed and spun him and chucked him.
Yep, and he started trampolining off of things, and he still managed to try to aim himself so he could try to get an upskirt on Poltergeist.
He was going after Poltergeist in a hard way.
Yeah.
She was just like covering up her kimono and running.
Yeah.
They're like, he's so fast, and he knows they don't have good close combat. I'm like, I don't think that's what he really cares about.
Well, but the combination of the quirks, that the way they combined their quirks to get those three.
B was ridiculous.
Yeah, the B combined those three specifically combined their quirks. The Poltergeist size and twin impact combined those quirks along with a support item that Shota had, that little like radar thing. Really helped them sort of narrow down.
I want to know a little bit more about it. How does he know?
Yeah.
How does he put a tracker on it, or is it the stuff he already has or built in with it?
It's not clear. And for another thing
think
about
him, he could just literally throw sand and annihilate somebody.
Yeah, it would be like a razor wind sort of thing, like being in the middle of a sandstorm, getting flayed by all the sand getting blown at high speeds, sort of thing. It may depend somewhat on his quirk, whether it's like how much strength he can actually put into it. Because if you do it to sand, you're not going to be able to get like a
I would think he'd be good at close combat, or at least trained to be. Cause
he is good at close combat. You saw that towards the end of the second episode when he basically was like the god bod thing. It's like he looks heavy set, but that's muscle. He has muscle gut going on.
I could think if he did like the rapid punches and just do twin impact or fire, I think is what it was.
Yeah,
and it just goes. It's literally
like and then. You are already dead. Twin impact, and then
I swear that's got to be where they got it from.
Yeah,
because you've got all the martial arts that just does the thing that kind of take it, and then half second later, boom, 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 take all the hits.
Yeah,
shit. He could just punch the air.
Except I think he actually has to hit something like physical.
Like when Monoma swung at Deku, and then
in Monoma's case. He just barely tagged him, but it was enough, and he got his like left arm's gauntlet thing, his support item on his arm. That was enough for him to try to copy his quirk. And we saw later that when he tried to actually use it, nothing happened, because again, he's not getting the full thing. He's only getting like the stockpile quirk aspect of it, and that's it. He basically got the empty bucket, if you will. But
he got the transfer quirk. Ooh, that'd be kind of sick.
Yeah, but he only has it for 10 minutes, and he doesn't know what it is. So I don't think that would do him any good. But he used that twin impact thing later.
After he was already caught.
Yeah, he was caught, and he was in the cage, but he just goes fire, and Deku's like arm just literally just.
That was his face. I thought when he hit his face, he took the hit.
Oh, that's right, because he like tagged him across the face again, which is enough to try to copy his quirk, but that little like brushing slap then redoubled or whatever by the
doubled into a punch.
Yeah, just knocked him out of the way from trying to catch Shinso. But we've been sort of glossing over One for All, because Deku's power when the fight actually started, Monoma confronted him and
was egging him on hard,
doing Monoma things, taunting him, trying to get him to verbally respond, because that's the whole brainwashing thing, because Shinso was also close by, and I'm sure some of those taunts that we heard going around may have been coming from Shinso and not necessarily from Monoma.
I mean, Monoma could have just taken his power anyway.
This is true, but we saw him using Poltergeist's quirk and using the size quirk and twin impact.
So maybe he really does have 4.
Maybe he has 4. We don't know.
Maybe he even pushed it to 5.
We don't know. But regardless, he was trying to get a response out of Deku, and Deku is just getting angrier and angrier because Monoma's really good at getting under people's skin. And
he brought up All Might losing his power.
And, he brought up like Bakugo, and because
ain't you guys frenemies?
Yeah, you're frenemies with him, right? And he let himself get captured, and it's because of that All Might can't be a hero anymore, and that really pissed off Deku to the point where it's like, I need to catch this guy, and
I need to punch his face off.
Well, no, he was literally, because we saw in what came later that it was literally like you wanted to catch this guy, and that's what caused Black Whip to manifest. Because Deku's literally like trying to line up his like air shot thing, and then suddenly his arm just like erupts with this like black mist stuff just lashing around. You compared it to like Venom,
Oh,
and it was very Venom-esque.
It's like a Venom whip when he's like shooting out his tendrils.
Mm-hmm. And it was just lashing around, smacking all over the place. Shit, everybody looking on. And
it was throwing him around. It threw him into walls multiple times.
Well, it's because he has no control over it, and he's just struggling, trying to contain it. He's just like, run! And Monoma's just like, okay, this is new. This is not fair.
Spider-Man didn't have control of the symbiote, so
But even and Monoma's running away. He's just like he has a new power. That's so not fair. And but it took Uraraka sort of leaping in and trying to like cool down, hug him to try to get him to calm down.
She did a full-on embrace.
Yep, and when he still couldn't get it under control, she called to Shinso and said, "Use your brainwashing on him.
Brainwash him, stop him."
And so he like pulled the little face mask down. It's just like
he's like, "What the hell am I gonna say to stop him? Or what can I get him to respond?
Come on and fight me!" And Deku's like, "Okay," and then brainwash. Everything immediately calms down. But then Deku gets pulled into the like one for all like mind space thing that we saw in his dream.
And all you can see is the top part of his right hand, top of his head, and I think his feet. Where everything else was mist.
Everything else is like black mist, and then one of the vestiges of the torchbearers of one for all shows up. We never got his specific name in these couple of episodes, but it's revealed that quirk, the Black Whip, had been his quirk, and basically said it's part of One for All now, and it's become way stronger because of that.
It's a lot stronger than when I had it.
But he also basically told him these quirks will respond to your emotions. So at
least that one.
At least Black Whip will. So it's like you need to keep an eye on your heart, on your emotions, basically.
Kind of like when Peter Parker had Venom.
Yep.
And it's like it responded to him being emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he got upset, it fed off of his emotions. When he got pissed off, he wanted to tear people apart, even though it wasn't him.
Well, the symbiote was also trying to make him more aggressive in that case.
It did, but I think it was just a projection of what he was already feeling. Like the immense grief over things that he would feel sadder.
As part of the whole One for All thing, the vestige told Deku, "You're the one that will complete One for All," which ties into the thing from the beginning of the episode that I just sort of skipped over because I was like, we're going to talk about that later. But the first episode of this two-parter opened with events going on at Tartarus Prison, where All for One is being held, and a couple of guards were like, "He's fidgeting again." And they were commenting, "It's like, I hope they sentence him soon. It's a drain. We're draining our resources. keeping him here," which is a fair concern. And then he starts talking, like he can hear to them specifically, which is freaky as hell.
I mean, he's heard everything you ever said. So
and
good luck.
But then he says, "I can hear my little brother's voice."
And this pain, or the kind of like the pain was making him twitch.
Yeah, but as we know from Deku's dream, where he saw the origins of One for All, All for One's brother had been the original bearer of One for All, and his power transfer quirk combined with the power stockpiling quirk that he was given started the ball rolling. And All Might gets a call at the beginning of the episode from Gran Torino, where they talk about the dreams that Deku was having, and Gran Torino tells him of All Might's master, the previous torchbearer before him, having a similar dream where she saw a young man, and he looked at her and said, "The time has not yet come." And now we've got this whole thing with like One for All and the Black Whip guy talking about how it was sort of absorbed into the core, and now the core is starting to wake up and grow stronger. I'm just like, is this that whole like quirk singularity thing that they were talking about? Because especially the imagery that they put in with the core waking up looked like a black hole growing bigger. Yeah, but after Deku has this like little dream sequence, Uraraka in the real world, after everything's calmed down, like slaps him to wake him up,
and then apologized immediately.
Yep.
And she was helping him float down because
he'd been been suspended up in the air from the whip, and they've like just touched down when Monoma comes flying in and tries to attack them.
They just touched down, and he realized what happened. He's like, "I'm so sorry. Get out of the way. Go. Oh, everything's fine." And he takes a look at it. It was just so apologetic
because she'd been sort of bruised a bit.
The whips knocked her mask off and beat her face in.
And he's apologizing to her, and then Monoma comes flying in, takes a swipe at Deku, and briefly,
she immediately grabs his arm, going
just martial arts, and just slams him into the ground, like
gunhead martial arts, and then he literally kicked out of it like midair and flipped away, and he's like, nope.
And that's when the rest of 1B started attacking. But
oh man, he ruined our strategy.
And then 1A shows up, and then it was a full-on brawl.
Honestly, I think they would have probably had that well handled if it wasn't for that wild card, if you will.
Yeah, I think so. But then, in the next episode, the teachers had actually mobilized to try to get things
look to
try to stop Deku, because they recognized something's wrong. This is not. But after things got under control, they were like, Aizawa's like, we're going to hold off. They've got.
Look at them; they're determined.
They are determined to finish this fight. So let them have it. And
I think it was mostly because he was thinking it was unfair to Shinso that this is his opportunity, and squandering his second opportunity to show off what he can do.
Yeah.
Because of an incident happening.
Yeah.
On the
something
field.
outside of Shinso's control.
Yes.
Specifically.
And I think he had a soft spot for there, and he did make the point that if anything were to happen, get my ass in there and stop Deku.
Yeah, because if it's related to his quirk, then I can just shut it down. And as we saw from a brief flashback,
I'm wondering,
he has a soft spot for Shinso.
Can he shut down his quirk?
The full thing? No, but we've seen him shut down Deku's strength quirk from the tryouts when he tried to was about to use his
full strength,
and Aizawa shut him down because he recognized what was about to happen. And so when Deku just changed it up and used just one finger rather than his full arm, he was like, okay, maybe you can keep it under control, but you're still being reckless.
I've got a thing about the why All for One is feeling things of his brother.
Well, it's because it's related to his quirk.
If it's waking up inside Deku, he can feel it because he was the one to give him the original.
Because
stockpile.
He passed the original quirk on.
Maybe the stockpile's the one that has the residual of that, and that's why one of them is completely darkened. Mm-hmm. That you don't know, because maybe it is All for One originally.
Maybe.
That you see.
It could also be that he's waiting for One for All to be completed, and he's like, "Thank you. I'm just going to take that now.
I'm gonna take that back. Thanks for harvesting for me."
Yeah. Because he was already and that's just kind of terrifying, because he's already ridiculously overpowered as it is. And if he were to
strength magnification,
and then if he were to
5 and shit like that,
and then if he were to just absorb take One for All, a completed One for All,
in his current state, I don't think he'd be taking it for himself. I think he wants the pass along again to... Well, because he theoretically can pass quirks along still.
Yeah, because
I think
he's very much involved in the creation of the Nomas.
I think he wants to get out, but he doesn't want to fight anymore. He wants to pass it on to someone younger.
Well, yes, and we know exactly who he's going to pass it on to. The same guy that he's been grooming for the entire series. Shigaraki. Tomura Shigaraki.
Yep.
We need to start specifying Tomura Shigaraki because I'm pretty sure there's some other connection going on there with the Shigaraki name, because we know that's not Tomura's actual name. That's just the name he's using.
Because also the original bearer looks an awful lot like him.
But but going back to Aizawa and Shinso, we got a brief flashback in this episode, because we saw that Shinso's actually getting pretty good with the combat scarf thing. I forget what he actually calls it.
I can't remember either.
But we saw a flashback from when he was training with Aizawa, and he's like gotten tangled up in it, and he says to Aizawa's like, "It took you 6 years to master this. You really think I can figure this out?" And Aizawa's like, it took me 6 years to master it because I was doing it all from scratch. I had no one to guide me. And he's like, and I wouldn't be helping you out if I wouldn't be helping you out if I thought you were a hopeless case.
Which means he felt highly of this 1A class when people have told him he just failed full classes before.
Yeah.
Within the first day.
Well, and there was also when Aizawa basically held them back on getting involved and shutting down the match. He, Vlad King was just like, you really are a softie, Aizawa. And Aizawa's just like, shut up. Which is what you say when they're right, but you don't want to admit it.
I think he said, I hear that.
Yeah.
I've been hearing that or something like that.
It's like, yeah, maybe you're right. But...
that's what it was. I think he said that.
But yeah, and we saw Monoma try to make use of One for All, because we saw that like green lightning effect crackling around him. But then Ochako again, Uraraka again came in and like tackled him and managed to like pin him down like cop style, like the hammerlock and everything.
She is a quick one.
And then Monoma's just like, I copied a blank.
It's like, I pulled a blank. I'm like, I don't know about that.
It's like, you didn't copy a blank. You just, yes and no. It's more so, like...
when it comes to that, maybe he only copies the original... Who he touches, their original quirk. And if
the quirk has evolved in certain ways, he doesn't have the evolution.
Or since Deku never really had a quirk originally, he never got.
Except we saw him with the One for All like effect crackling around him. I'm thinking that's part of the stockpile thing.
I wonder if it's Deku's original flair. It's his original quirk, is he could just be flashy.
I glow. Hey, it's not like a sort of flashy, glowing thing hasn't been seen as a quirk. The very first quirk that ever manifested was illumination. And so Uraraka captured Monoma, carted him off to timeout, and he then used Twin Impact to try to knock Deku out of the way, because Deku was in pursuit of Shinso, and Shinso's like, I can't fight him head on because he's starting to get his powers under control again, and he's too fast for me. But it was when Deku's using his speed to try to catch up, that's when the Twin Impact in the face. And he still managed to recover from that and land on his feet.
And we got to mention that the cleanup of the match was Ochako just literally cleaning house.
Well, before that happened, 1B managed to turn it around on Pinky and Mineta, because they're just we saw Shota doing like his god bod, like uppercutted him out of the air and everything. But then Uraraka comes in and saves the day.
Literally judo chops Poltergeist
like,
out.
Like straight in the back of the neck, and then she like tackled Kodai into
Kodai had like maybe
balls.
one word if she even talked at all.
Yeah, she's a quiet one, but she got like sort of bodied into a bunch of Minetta's.
I was like, that was a pretty.
And it was a bit of a fan servicey moment in that because it was chest to chest, boink.
You made this look like, oh whoa, what is this all about? I'm like the
yeah, and then I saw
purple
that
balls,
and I was like, okay, but it was still just like, did they really have to do the boink? You know?
I think so, 100%, because she had to wrap her arms around her back so she couldn't use her sides quirk.
Oh, that's true. I now that you mention it, she did have her arms like pinned behind her.
It wasn't just all fan service; it was practical.
Well, there was fan service, yes, but it wasn't all fan service.
I mean, it's fan service because it's two girls fighting close together.
But with all of that, they managed to and Deku managed to take down Shinso, and with 4 of them locked up in the cage, and the 5th one unable to escape from her predicament. That gave the win to Class 1A, which means Class 1A won overall. Which is Monoma
keep Mineta away from her.
But
she's stuck there like, wait, where's Mineta at?
Yeah, but
cameras are on you, boy.
Yeah, exactly. But and afterwards, Shinso went and talked to Aizawa and Vlad King, and he's just like, I know this was all a test, or that this was a test to see whether I was ready. And they're like, how did you... He's like... And Vlad turns to Aizawa, was like, did you tell him? And Aizawa was like, no. And Shinso like, I figured
Shinso
it out.
said it right away.
It's like, Shinso's like, no, I kind of figured it out, the timing. And
two evaluation matches.
I got 2 matches to show off what I could do. And he's basically like, I know I've got a long way to go. He in one of his internal monologues earlier, it's just sort of like, he's basically compared it to, it's just like, I'm still crawling while they're like leaping ahead. But in the aftermath of it, Aizawa like turned to Deku, was like, and essentially without actually saying it, he was like, what the fuck just happened? And Deku, because he can't really reveal the full extent of his quirk without giving away a major...
I mean, even All Might had no idea of the quirk.
Well, All Might may not have ever never had to tap into that aspect of it.
Well, I mean, he did say you are literally, like in the Vestige told him, hey, you're the one to culminate all 6. Meaning that all that's been passed on has maybe been one quirk at a time usable.
Mm-hmm. But it's like, All Might, for as smart as he was at using his like strength quirk, never really put much effort into learning what else he could do.
He had no idea.
And
even his...
Well, and in his case, it's like he practiced so hard with the strength enhancing thing to fully master it, sort of thing.
I mean, where he got it from, she didn't even know the other powers.
So, yeah.
Because the guy came to her in the Vestige and said, you're not ready.
So it's obviously something to do with All For One's brother, and the vestige of him in One For All has some sort of control over how much the other quirks manifest.
Or it just happens to be Deku's something special.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta have that protagonist special. But the whole thing is, like, the best part about My Hero Academia over other animes that makes the protagonist OP, he wasn't OP from the start. Even though he was given a power to make him OP, he cannot be OP.
Well, because he is so OP that it breaks him.
It's not like, oh, well, we're just gonna go do, Black Clover. Character's like, I got nothing. I've got everything. I'm a god. 7 Deadly Sins, similar situation. Lead character, god. Goku gets there, god.
But in Goku's case, he's mostly just interested in finding the strongest things to fight, and so he can fight them. And if there's nothing of that, he's just like, okay, I'm gonna train. Oh, and I'm hungry. I'm gonna eat like everything in sight.
I'm gonna eat a train car load of food.
But Deku, when he's asked by Aizawa what happened, he's just sort of like, I don't really know, which isn't entirely untrue. He may have had that moment with the vestige that gave him Black Whip, but he also basically admits, I still don't really know what happened.
And it feels like he's having to. It even says that he has to learn his power all over again.
Well, and because when he seemed like he mastered it briefly when he was confronting Shinso.
Like, Shinso
used his combat scarf to grab a couple of pipes and like try to slam them on him, and Deku manifested the Black Whip to catch them. But that was like literally all he could do because it was too powerful for him to use at 20%. He had to dial everything back to like 8%. And even then, he's just like, this thing is so strong, I have to start small.
He's going to have to start fresh with this one.
And that's presumably going to be the case with like every other quirk in One For All that he manifests.
Unless he gets so good at actually controlling One For All's strength itself that maybe he could hold it, but only get to certain quirks to 20% when All For One or the strength enhancement is up to like 50%. Mm-hmm. Get that to 20, a new one comes along, it starts at 8, and then they start...
Did you ever play the Infamous games?
Yes.
Did you play Second Son?
Yes, that's the only one I've played.
Well then, I think of it as very similar to the powers that Delsin uses in Second Son. It's like he can copy other people's conduit powers, but when he copies them, he starts literally at level 0, and he has to learn how to sort of
That game was good. I really wish they'd make a new one for PS. Was it PS4 or PS? It was. It was PS4. It's like a launch.
The first one was a launch for PS3. Second Son, I think, was PS4.
Yeah, that was a launch game.
So yeah, I really do hope they do another Infamous game. But it's like with his, he starts at level 0 and he has to learn how to tap into everything about whatever the new power is, and just gradually build it back up, and to the point where spoilers for the final boss of the game. The final boss of the game literally weaponizes that aspect of his power when she lets him copy her control over like concrete and everything, and then basically it's like then he has nothing. He's starting at level 0 because there's nothing else around him.
That's been a while since I played that. I don't even remember that.
Well, it's like the whole boss fight is like he's starting at the bottom with those powers, and his allies have to like bring him the like generators for him to absorb energy from, so he can start tapping into the actual powers of it. But it was an interesting. It's just that's how I'm thinking of this aspect of One For All. He has all these other powers, but he's gonna need to learn how to master them, and he's got to start at a level 0 with all of them.
And we also have a Bakugo moment.
Yeah, Bakugo, when he saw that Deku was manifesting more powers.
Like, just sort of every time they showed him, he said nothing until the end. He goes, so he's got to do power.
Just sort of like, this isn't fair.
No,
I
think he likes it that it's a challenge.
Yeah, because he's just sort of like, he knows how powerful his own quirk is, but he also knows that Deku, as for all the power that Deku has inherited, is still learning how to use it. And Bakugo is just going to be like, you're just making it more of a challenge for me to overcome so I can prove that I'm better. And Aizawa, after they sort of got an answer from Deku's whole thing, says, and Deku basically credits Shinso and Uraraka with helping him get his power under control. It's like, if it hadn't been for them giving me the opening to, or getting it back under control so I could learn a little bit more about it, so I could tap back into it without freaking out, then it would have gotten a lot worse. And Shinso tries to claim that he did it all for like selfish reasons.
Aizawa just hits him. It's like, we didn't ask for anything more than the initial.
Yeah, Aizawa just walks up, grabs the two ends of his scarf, and just goes,
"Stop it! Yeah. Stop making your."
It's like he didn't have to go any further than that. But Aizawa basically says to all of them, he's kind of addressing Shinso, but he's addressing everyone.
Passing grades.
Well, no. He specifically said Shinso got a passing grade, and Shinso was like, I'm not satisfied with that. It's like, I like that it was a passing grade, but I'm not satisfied with just passing. He wants to pass with, like, flying colors kind of thing. But, Aizawa also said that, like, becoming a hero isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of work. And he was addressing both classes, but he was really kind of saying that to Shinso.
Yep. Because
Shinso is just, still has the confidence issues that's just sort of like, I am so far behind. And Aizawa is basically trying to tell him, it's like, yeah, but you can get there. You just got to put some more work in. And they do go out of their way to try to emphasize that a lot of these kids have their issues. That's granted sort of like an anime thing in general. Whenever they put a little bit of focus on a character, they've always got to sort of show a little bit more detail on their personality or backstory to sort of be like, there's a reason they are the way they are, sort of thing. Not always necessarily meant to sympathize, but at least to give context in some cases. And they also try to bring out the whole, like, there are drawbacks to some of these quirks,
which is something they don't usually do in a lot of animes, that these overpowered individuals have a drawback or have more than one note personalities.
Mineta, though.
Mineta.
No, we did see that he was a strategist.
Yeah.
He wasn't stupid about what he's doing, but
and the fact that his strategy actually served two purposes: one, to try to protect his teammates, and two, so he can perv.
I mean, more power to him. He's thinking on multiple levels.
Yeah, it's just granted one of those levels is down in the gutter, but it was a good couple of episodes, and now that the combat thing is over, we'll presumably start moving back into the villain arc.
I mean, it looks like the next episode is going to be more on.
It's just sort of going to wrap. It's sort of going to wrap up the combat training thing.
But then we get an early Christmas episode after that. Literally says Christmas.
Have a Merry Christmas. Yeah. So it is.
And okay, Christmas in June.
Well, I mean, when it comes to Japan, Christmas is less of a thing there. Golden Week, on the other hand, is like the big holiday for them. As with my admittedly limited knowledge of Japanese culture, but yeah, it was a good couple of episodes. Now we've got like some of the aftermath of the combat training, a bit of a breather episode, which isn't going to be entirely a breather episode.
Yeah, they never are.
There's always going to be something that's going to further along some plot. It's like the whole school festival thing. Then you had Gentle Criminal going on with all that as well.
Which was still pushing more for development of character.
Yeah. And, we've got, All For One is starting to wake up. And the thing with All For One is he is only locked up because it
serves his purpose.
Well, yeah, because he hasn't decided to break out yet.
Yeah.
Because with the level of power he has, if he wants to leave that prison, there is not a goddamn thing anybody in that prison can do to stop him.
And he's kind of proven it by what he said while he was there. He's like, sorry, I'm just in a little bit of pain, so I twitch a bit. And they're like,
You're not supposed to be able to hear us.
Oh, fuck, what else did he hear?
Everything.
Oh, well, I quit. I don't want
I don't know. Me. I don't know how I would be able to handle that kind of thing. I mean...
Well, especially, I would assume they're talking shit about him at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Now, the thing is would All For One...
care?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't serve his narrative, no, but still. If they're in his way, he wouldn't think twice.
It's just sort of like, you're the one that, was,
You'll be my hostage.
Or the one that does the most trash talking. I'd be like, you die last. It's not, you die first, you die last. Kill everybody else. And basically make it plain. It's like, I'm killing them because of what you did. And I'm going to let you sit here and think about it.
That should about wrap us up.
Yep. So, we'll be back in 1 week. Because...
Seems like 2 standalones.
Yeah, it seems like a couple of standalones. So we're not needing to sort of pace
Group
these
them.
out. But that'll wrap up this edition of the Herocast. So for Sam, I am Jay, and we will see you next week.
Plus Ultra.
Plus Ultra!
Thanks for listening to the Bored to Death Bingecast. Be sure to check out our library of past podcasts via CKCC Radio or via our YouTube channel, and give us a like and subscribe. We'll see you after our next binge.